You are listening to Shameless Stories, and I'm Nicola Humber, founder of the Unbound Press, soul-led publishing company for magical women writing world-changing books. And we are delighted to be the sponsor of this podcast. So enjoy, magical one.
Welcome to another episode of Shameless Stories. I literally am super excited for this week's episode. I am absolutely delighted to welcome on to Shameless Stories, the podcast that talks about shame, how it manifests in our lives and how we move through it. I have the wonderful Sally Berg joining me today. So excited to have you here. You describe yourself as the queen of pleasure leading the menopause pleasure revolution. And I already joked before we came on that I need some of you in my life. And I would love to explore a little bit about what you do for women like myself in perimenopause, car crash, rite of passage into the wonderful magical midlife. So do tell me, so how tell me your story. How did this all come about?
Well, thank you, Sarah, for welcoming me so warmly. And I'm just absolutely delighted to be here to have a big fat chat with you. Because I am like beyond passionate about supporting women, probably age 40-ish plus, through perimenopause and beyond by cultivating pleasure and eros in their bodies. Because what I've learned is that cultivating pleasure and eros in female-bodied beings is not just a luxury or something that we, put way down the to-do list, but it's actually a priority. And pleasure is our birthright, but so much gets in the way of us actually prioritizing our own pleasure. And what's interesting is, because we've been conditioned to be in a more masculine doing mode, that we've then, pushed through a lot of our own boundaries. And so we've kind of forgotten and become disconnected from our own bodies. We've become like heads on sticks, and we think that our mind is going to sort out all of our issues, all of our problems. And what I know to be true, as someone in my 60th year, living my most vibrant, juicy and sensual, creative, energized life ever, who sailed through menopause, is that pleasure is the portal, the gateway to living this life. We just have to remember. And it's about coming back to our own bodies of wisdom. Our own bodies of wisdom hold the keys to the kingdom, the keys to heaven. But again, we've been told that, through science and our mindset that, that's what's going to sort out everything for us. But as female-bodied beings, our bodies are mystical, magical, cyclical portals. And the more we can tap into that, the more magic can happen. But of course, we are the generation of women who, we wanted it all, we got it all, and then guess what? We had to fucking do it all. So in Western culture, we still are, and that's what I see is that's why I think a lot of women hit perimenopause like a brick wall, because their adrenals are fried, their bodies are flooded with stress hormone cortisol from like doing, pushing, having to often be very much in their masculine, in the workplace, in the home, holding lots of people, caring for lots of people, that whole sandwich generation thing. We often had children later, so we've got younger kids and we've got aging parents. So, we're juggling a lot of balls. And what happens with cortisol, which is fascinating, and what I love is that I'm backed by science as well, is cortisol creates inflammation in the body and it creates brain fog, drop in libido, weight gain, low energy, lack of sleep, and can lead to autoimmune diseases. So what I've learned in my research for mature eros is that what if it wasn't necessarily that we're all displaying all these menopausal symptoms, as we've been told by the mainstream medical profession, etc. But what if, in fact, our bodies are just like fucked and we're just like burnt out, and our bodies start to say, do you know what? We cannot continue at this pace. So all these symptoms start to display, which is our very wise, beautiful body saying, honey, if you don't slow the fuck down, the wheels are going to fall off.
Yeah.
And so that's why, as well, I like to sort of look at perimenopause as like this powerful rite of passage, and that menopause is like can be the most incredible chapter of your life. It's not a condition to be fixed. It's not an illness, and it's not something that will just go away.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for your best chapter yet. If you want to look at it like that, we have a choice. And this is like, it becomes like this crossroads of like, we have a choice. Do we go in, stay in our minds and think, oh, for fuck's sake, I just want this all to go away. Just give me a pill. I want a silver bullet. I want, just make it all go away. Which is, you know, again, what we're conditioned to do. We're busy. Life is full. We don't want to, anything that gets in the way of that, anything that's a bit inconvenient or might, you know, dare I say it, mean we have to prioritize ourselves
Yeah.
and our own wellness and well-being. You know, because what I noticed in the work that I do is that underneath the story of like, I don't have time for your practices or these practices, what I don't have time for it. What's actually underneath that, the shadow part of that is, I don't think I'm worthy of giving
Yeah.
myself some loving attention.
Yeah.
My self-worth is often tied up with caring for others, doing things for others. You know, let's face it, we've got generations of women programmed to do that, to be looking after everyone else before themselves. You know, that stuff runs really deep. And I feel like, you know, we live in fascinating times, right? Extraordinary times of great change and shift. And what I know to be true is that what the world really needs right now is mature women to be like in their pleasure, embodied, like fierce boundaries, open heart, and what I call like a soft power that comes from the back body. It's not that thrusting forwards, like doing aggressive. It's more this receptive, soft power, this presence that says, yeah, the fucking queen is here and she's got this. And the thing about this presence is once it's cultivated in our bodies, it becomes like this resourceful fountain that creates more energy rather than depletes our energy. And that's why I'm all about pleasure practices, because pleasure is a practice. It's not a given.
Yeah.
But when we start practicing pleasure and touch for ourselves and prioritize our own pleasure, such magic can happen, because it can then cultivating feel good hormones like oxytocin, endorphins, and dopamine in the body start naturally counteracting the effects of the cortisol. So that's my science bit, because that's what happens. The feel good hormones counteract the cortisol hormones. So then your body can come more into balance, and it can start to feel spaciousness and ease and relaxation. It calms the nervous system so that we're not constantly in kind of fight, flight, doing, coping mode. And then we're not sleeping either because we're frazzled. So, you know, I feel like this presence in mature women. So it's not only, you know, health, wellness, but it's in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know, embodied, mature female leadership is the way that we are going to create a pathway to the new earth. This presence is what's needed to, you know, balance out the effects of millennia of patriarchal systems. Because this presence alone, that's how powerful we are as female-bodied beings. You know, we've forgotten how powerful we are because we've been told we're not for so long. And particularly why I'm passionate about the mature sector, because at the moment, like 1 in 10 women leave work because of menopause. They leave work because they're not having the support and recognition that they need to cope with what's happening. So they leave. It's like, we need those women.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the way to support them, is through embodied pleasure, because it becomes energizing and powerful, and you're in your creativity, you're in your intuition, and it's this pleasure is all about really plugging in from the earth up rather than the mind down. We're plugging from the eros of the earth is readily available to us at any time. Just go and sit with your pants off on some grass in the woods and feel that pulse. That's a really simple practice, and it might sound crazy, but it works. I'm feeling that sort of erotic pulse through us. The earth is there, ready to nourish us with that. And when we drink that in through our pussy, up through our womb, into our heart, it's like this. Our sexual life force energy is our life force energy. And we've been told that we're going to on a trajectory to becoming dried up old bags, right? Because we live in a youth obsessed culture. Our Western culture is youth obsessed. So, we've been told that, you're going to be invisibilized and marginalized. And I'm like, fuck that shit. It's so not true. I'm living my best life ever. And it's totally possible. And I feel it's also a radical responsibility, because I feel like women sort of 50 plus, particularly, I think, we're the first generation of women that the younger ones are really looking up to.
Yeah.
Because we're more sassy and aware and awake. And, I notice when I speak to younger women, they're like, oh, I'm so happy to meet you and work with you because you've given me some hope. I see my mum or my auntie at home, and they're like in a grey cardigan and putting up with staying in a toxic relationship. And, but you've made me see that that's not where I'm going, that there is a possibility to age with sensuality and sass and this embodied soft power.
Yeah.
And to do it naturally, and I'm not at all anti HRT. We all have different choices, different needs, but I'm saying there is a different way. Like, I would know more, I love the lines on my face are like the map of a life well lived and loved.
But
This
if I
tells
look
my
like you
story.
at 60, I'll be happy, But I think you're right. I think it's like all of the things you've just shared just then. I could have been, you could have been speaking to me weeks ago. They're conversations I'm having regularly around, this. I'm moving through that rite of passage right now. But I think as well, it's like what's so amazing and so wonderful is that people like myself at my age are able to talk about these things, because before you didn't talk about those things. You suffered in silence, you kept quiet, you had your fan and you did it without people knowing. And like now it's out and proud. And I'm teaching my girls when I'm having a flush to just wait a sec while this happens because I can't concentrate right now. But I think it's great because, like you say, you're a generation, we're learning from you. And I'm looking at you and seeing women of your age and thinking, yes, I want to be like you when I grow up,
I grow up, yeah.
whenever that is. And
Yeah.
that is like, we've got different role models now. It's not, you're not, not hiding in the kitchen, waiting for retirement to do the washing and the ironing forever. It's kind of, we can reinvent ourselves at any given moment. And I think that's so powerful. And the pleasure piece, interesting. I was walking home with a mum from school and she was like, I just can't feel joy at the moment. I just can't feel any joy. And that's a midlife perimenopausal feeling, because I don't know what brings me joy. And it's interesting that you opened up this line of inquiry in your work where, well, we don't know what brings us pleasure because we've been told how to
We've been
enjoy.
and also, yeah, that's a fascinating thing, and I'm going to weave a shame piece into this as well, because also as women in our culture, we've been taught to outsource our pleasure. We've been taught from little girls, we've been told, be a good girl, be nice, smile, the whole fucking Disney princess thing of, that's been how we've been told to behave, to be nice, don't be too loud, don't be too wild, don't laugh too much. So we've been constrained for a long time. And, what happens then is we sort of make ourselves smaller into this good girl behavior, because we've learned that that's what gets us approval, whether it's within our family, within our friend group, at school.
Yeah.
And, there's radical change happening there. Hurrah. I'm sure you notice it in your daughters, who are probably much feistier than we ever were. And, what's brilliant.
Why I've got lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, sorry.
No, it's true. But we in my we grew up with a lot of shame about being too much. There's still a residue for me of being that too much woman.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that that's actually my superpower, because it now comes with what I call, this soft power. It's not like I have to be shouty and aggressive. Bless the early feminists, they had to speak very loud and make a lot of noise to be noticed and heard. Things are shifting and changing. So now we can use, that's why this embodiment pleasure piece is so crucial, because then our power comes from a much more rooted place. That means that people will pay attention a lot more, because we're not having to shout too loud. We can just really have this like thrumming, fierce presence in us. So that's a very important part around, and dissolving the shame, and the shame that comes with menopause. Historically, as you said, it was something, you were like crying alone in the kitchen over a cup of tea, and it wasn't something you were supposed to talk about. There was no awareness about it. Friends didn't talk about it. And like many of our female cycles, menstruation, there's a lot of things that have been cloaked in secrecy and shame. And what's so important now is that we are reclaiming our feminine cycles as rites of passage. I know so many women who are like working with younger women with their menstruation and making it joyful and bringing it into the light. And like you said about your friend who said she couldn't feel any joy, but often I think what happens is that life gets so busy that we start to our nervous systems are frazzled, and we start to numb out to actually feeling. We stop smelling the flowers, we stop noticing the clouds, and that's a lot of what my work is about. It's it's coming back to our senses. It's coming back to actually awakening our basic senses again, so that we start to remember how to feel. I was quite seriously depressed for 5 years after the birth of my second child. And it coincided with a time when I was starting to really dive deeply into my childhood. I grew up with a bipolar alcoholic father who was very violent and abusive. So I know shame very well. I grew up with a lot of shame, because he was sort of Jekyll and Hyde. To the outside world, he was all fun and hilarious, and oh, Bob likes a good drink. And then at home, we got the worst of it. He just would shout and be violent. And so the depression for me, what I learned was depression is about pushing down feelings, like pushing them away, because your body doesn't know how to cope with it. And this sort of leads into what you're saying about, what I feel is that I'm trailblazing something with other women, of like trailblazing a new map for menopause, like creating a new map. Because as you said, it's like, well, what do you look, who do you look to? What do you do? And it is a minefield out there. It's like, oh my God, you've got all this social media and whatnot bombarding you with like what supplements to take, how you're supposed to exercise, HRT, not HRT. So what I feel I'm bringing is that I'm cutting through all of that and say, before you even start to think, oh, what supplements do I need? Come back to your own body, because your
Yeah.
own body holds all the wisdom, but we've just forgotten that. So by tapping into our own intuition and what I call my pussyometer, so the
Love that.
pussyometer, once we start really tapping into our womb and our pussy, and I love to use the word pussy. I know, the Sanskrit word yoni is beautiful, but it's not from my culture. And I love reclaiming pussy in the same way that the queer community have reclaimed a lot of words that we use to insult them, because I feel like, pussy is used as an insult to denote weakness. And I'm sorry, our pussies are the most powerful part of our body. We could actually push a fucking baby out this thing.
I know. It's just
It's
madness,
like,
isn't it?
it's like absolute madness. And another way that we're sort of slightly diminished, and that our sacred body parts are used as an insult. And so it's no wonder that as women, we also have a lot of shame around our pussies, and we don't really want to look down there or talk about it. Or, how many women do you know have probably actually taken a mirror and actually looked at their own pussy? It's a very powerful exercise to do, but something that most women be like, oh no. So it's like, is it any wonder that we're so disconnected from our sexual life force energy if we're too ashamed to even look at our own pussy? If
Well,
we
this
think it's like disgusting, we've been taught it's disgusting, it's smelly, it's this, it's that. Is it any wonder that we've become so disconnected from it?
and
When it actually, we're sitting on our power. We are literally sitting on our power.
That's the sad thing, isn't it? The sad truth is that there is still stigma around talking about periods, about menstruation, about puberty. Like my girls, they've been learning all about that. My youngest is learning about the biology of it, and it's kind of, and trying to sort of not reframe it, because there's age appropriate things, but trying to make her see it's not disgusting. Every other person has one, and isn't it fucking amazing that your body could, if it wanted to, create something, and it's kind of like, that's why we have the monthly bleed. That's why, aren't you amazing? This is why girls are better than boys. But and that is it, isn't it? Like unfortunately, men don't create within themselves. They have to create outside, and that's how things
exactly. And that's exactly it. That I remember reading something recently about how men get off on creating on the outside, and that's why they have a more of a movement towards perhaps creating like violence and war, because they need drama outside themselves. Like, we've got enough drama going on in our bodies to last a lifetime, and we are these creatrixes.
We're all searching for peace, and just please, can we just have
I know, and that's it, and that's why I'm so fierce about this as well, because I believe and I love men. I'm not a man basher, because I know that actually the patriarchal systems have like fucked us all over. It's not about
not just
pointing
us.
fingers at men, it's the systems that have done it. And that's what I know about the deep work that I've been doing for 15 years, the tantra, the embodiment movement, the plant medicine, all of it, and rooting into the, in devotion to the goddess. What that has really taught me is that, creating this power, this embodied power in female body beings, it creates harmony all around us in our family constellations. It creates right relations, and it restores natural law, LORE, without us having to do anything. It's about us being. And that's why I'm so passionate about, supporting women to cultivate this presence in their own bodies, because it sort of takes away that feeling that I'm supposed to be doing something. I'm supposed to be doing something to make the world better. It's
Yeah.
like we have very little control over what's happening out there, right? But we do have control over what's happening in here in our own bodies. And that's why I'm also really passionate about pleasure activism. And I just want to mention Adrienne Marie Brown here, who wrote a book called Pleasure Activism. What a legend. But I'm so inspired by her work, and I bring that into my practices because for me, and this is not gender specific, but pleasure activism is about when we cultivate more pleasure and ease in our bodies and calm our nervous systems down, we then have more capacity to hold ourselves and to hold all of life. We can respond to what's happening out there in a much more effective way. You know, when we're constantly pulled into the media circus, the dramas of mainstream news, when we're constantly in the suffering of the world and thinking, oh my God, the world's going to shit, what can I do? Guess what? We collapse. We collapse, we feel exhausted, we feel helpless. And I know this well because I was a really passionate community and social activist for the 20 years that I lived in South Africa, working a lot as an ally with marginalized communities.
Yeah.
So I know that pattern well, and I know that it can be effective, but I also know it can lead to extreme burnout, which is why now this pleasure activism piece for me is about resourcing ourselves. It's a bit like the oxygen mask story, you know, resource ourselves, and then like, oh gosh, yeah, I've got the energy to go and help clean a river this weekend. Whereas if I'm stuck in the drama, I'm like, oh my God, I just need to veg out to Netflix. I just can't. So, you know, for me, it's a very much healthier way of responding to what's happening out there. Is like caring for ourselves first. And, you know, it's sort of a bit of it might feel uncomfortable for some people. Like, how can you talk about pleasure when the world is burning? But it's like, well, how can you not talk about pleasure when the world is burning?
It goes
Because
back
without pleasure, we're just we're
what's the
useless.
point?
We can't. Yeah. What's the point? And you know, I if I'm like burnt out and my nervous system is frazzled and I'm like lying under the duvet sobbing, which believe me, I've been there many times, but I'm no use to anyone then, let alone myself. I'm not going to be effective as a female leader. So I've got to take care of myself and cultivate pleasure so that I can be the best of me. I can be vibrant and effective and still take care.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I can I'm nodding away with you for those that are listening, because it really resonates with women I've been speaking to, and my own experience is like this pleasure revolution. It is something that, and I think you made a point around women giving up their jobs when they hit menopause, and I can't remember if that was on camera or off. But I found that fascinating because there is a narrative around women, or there was a narrative around women who, when they hit their menopause, that's it, you're kind of done.
I know. I mean, what a load of bullshit that is, because, you know, I'm passionate about a thing I call, that I got gifted from my friend actually, called QBL, qualified by life.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sorry, as women, we have that in spade loads. You know, we have this embodied wisdom. But again, in Western culture, we don't have elders as they do in Indigenous culture. And Indigenous cultures have elders that are revered for their life experience, their wisdom. We become elderly. You know, elderly, very different flavor, right? Elderly to me speaks of like, oh, you've got to get a sensible haircut, put some elastic waist trousers on, and sit at home with a blankie and a cup of tea, watching daytime TV. You know, and that's what we've been conditioned to think. And you know, on a more mystical level, you know, mature feminine beings are very, very powerful. So guess what? We've been like damped down and diminished for centuries, because, you know, look at organized religion. You know, Christianity is all about making a female body a body of sin,
Yeah.
making female cycles dirty, and making sex something not to be talked of. It, sex is dirty. It's only for, you know, monogamous relationships in marriage to procreate children. So, you know, you turn a vibrant feminine being full of juice and sexuality into a body of sin, and the rest is her story. You know,
No wonder we're
not history.
causing
History is
so
written
much
by
pain.
male conquerors. You know, so there's a lot of her story rather than history that is unheard, unrecognized, unclaimed. That's probably a story for another day, but you know.
Oh yeah. I think we could talk about that for a while. I wanted to just kind of dive a little bit into, you've been touching a little bit on the shame piece.
Yeah.
What, I mean, the podcast is called Shameless Stories, so it's about living shamelessly, and the work that you do with women, not only talking about pleasure, is something that, I mean, anything that's outside of ourselves, I feel, can be fodder for shame. What is your experience with shame?
Well, yeah, my experience with shame started very young because of growing up with a, you know, bipolar alcoholic father, and my mother's coping mechanism was to pretend everything was tickety-boo.
Sure.
So, you know, as children with my siblings, we got these very mixed messages about, you know, and obviously when you're very young, you don't understand what shame is, but I remember the feeling in my body. And what I started to learn as I got older is that because I also got a body memory of being sexually abused by him much later in my life, in my 30s. And what I realized how this had impacted me was that it meant I always struggled to orgasm. I never felt safe to be fully sexual in my body, even though I was in, you know, a happy marriage to a very kind, beautiful man for a long time, had two amazing children. But I knew there was something missing.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's where, you know, the healing of this shame around the sexual abuse that led me to the depression. And the depression was this amazing gift, because I started to realize I couldn't talk my trauma away. I couldn't talk the shame away. I
Sure.
started to realize it was trapped in my body. And
Yeah.
that for me is what a lot of depression is. It's trapped trauma in the body that gets stuck. And then it just like, it
Yeah.
shuts you down. So that's what led me to Tantra and embodiment practices, because that taught me how to start expanding and to really, you know, Tantra welcomes all feelings, like the mad, the bad, the sad, the glad, all of it. All of it's welcome, and you're welcome in these, you know, safe containers if you're, you know, fortunate to have great facilitators and spaces, which I always did. You know, I mostly worked in women's spaces, but it was an opportunity then to start raging, actually. You know, some of my processes of like being cathartic around the shame from my childhood, you know, it's not pretty. Literally, like howling, screaming on all fours, you know. But it takes a lot of courage to you know, face our shame and deal with it. And what I love is the French translation for courage is the rage du cœur, which
Oh,
is the rage of the heart. And I always often use this in my teaching as well, because the raging heart for me like means like a heart that's passionate about cracking open over and over again, breaking our hearts open to feel more of life over and over again. And for me, that was you know, my healing journey from shame has been about learning actually how to feel. You know, what I didn't realize, and I think this is very typical for a lot of people who've experienced trauma or abuse in their childhood, is you become very armored because your body's trying to protect your little self, you know, and it's doing its best. But often what happens then, and this was my experience, is that I came into my adult years and all the armoring was still there, but I wanted to feel more, but I didn't know how. And so that, again, that's what Tantra taught me, was how to actually feel, how to keep, like meeting an edge. I can feel this much. Okay, that's enough for now. And then keep cracking open a bit more. And so again, it's sort of like the antithesis of what we've been conditioned to think, that actually feeling more actually creates more space for joy to come in. When, when we feel the depths of our despair, we can then feel the heights of our ecstasy. I call it like full spectrum living. But often, like you spoke of your friend, and to me, that would speak of someone who's maybe living in that much spectrum of feeling, because they're just in a coping mechanism. Like, okay, I've got shit to do. I've got to get on with life. So I'm not going to allow myself to feel too much of that. But when we don't feel, and grief is such a big piece as well, having regular moments to allow ourselves to feel grief. Grief is not something that's very welcome in our culture. Again, a lot of indigenous cultures, the whole village gets together and has a good wail and a cry on Friday night. It's part of the rhythm of life, is to grieve without having to necessarily, oh, somebody's died, or it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, let's just all grieve.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a brilliant antidote to, the way the world is right now, is like, the more we allow ourselves to just feel grief on a regular basis, then the more space is created in our bodies to feel more joy as well.
Yeah.
But that's not what we've been taught in our culture. We've been taught to, like, put a big girl pants on, buck up, put a brave face on. Whereas what I learned is, if I couldn't feel all the difficult feelings, I couldn't feel all the joy either. It's like becoming, yeah.
That's fascinating you say that as well, because like that is, or you're cutting yourself off from everything. That's,
yeah,
it's not, yeah, you're not one thing or another. You're like, when you talk about that bit in the middle, I resonate with that so much. That vanilla, I call it vanilla.
Yeah, it's like being in limbo, isn't it? Because you're not fully alive. And that's why, the work that I do now with my really carefully created programs, I call it themselves greatest hits, because, what I've done is I've harvested everything that's sort of worked for me in the last 15 years, and put it all together. And to be fair, a lot of it I got out of the way. I went to Egypt last October and I got a massive download from the goddess Isis. She just stripped me to the bone and was like, this is who you are. This is what you belong to. This is what you need to do. And I came home for 2 days. I was writing. I got the name Mature Eros. I drew the logo that I use, the gold logo. It all just came through. And that's why I love what I'm doing now, because it's almost like a winning combo of, I'm the vessel for it, but it's not coming from my ego. This is coming from like embodied knowing, deep knowing, mystical download from Isis. It's like I've put it all together in this magic cauldron and birthed in literally 6 months. I've been like this blazing comet. I've just created and birthed this whole thing in 6 months. It's come through really fast.
Yeah.
But you don't often see menopause and sexuality in the same sentence, right? And I feel, from all the research I've done, there's a lot of people talking about health, wellness, blah blah blah. But I feel like the sexuality piece is really key. And I've only seen a couple of other women talking about menopause and sexuality, and I feel like this is like the next wave.
Yeah, it's a new level, isn't it? And you look at Sex in the City and how that's evolved, and you can see so you can see that the sea is changing. We're not the Golden Girls anymore.
No. No.
It's definitely shifting and changing, and I'm here for it. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah, because also I think, we're not chasing, what I love is that we are sort of rewriting the story in a lot of ways. Like I say, I've chosen to do it naturally. I would never have Botox or anything like that. That's my choice and my way. But I love that I can be that trailblazer for younger women,
Yeah.
to say, yeah, you don't need lip fillers and whatnot to, or get rid of your wrinkles to actually be a vibrant, radiant woman. It comes from your radiance comes from the inside out.
Yeah.
And again, that's a really important piece. Again, with the outsourcing of pleasure and the outsourcing of beauty, is that we've been taught it's what we put on us, but it's like it's actually coming from the inside out. And yeah, you can drink as many green juices as you like, but if you're disconnected from your sexual life force, you're not going to shine brightly. It has to be a combination. And what I notice, the more I'm plugged into my sexual life force and radiance, actually, the better choices I make. Yeah, I love a glass of bubbles now and again. I love chocolate. I'm not one of those people who's going to be like on a raw food diet forever. I love a sensual life in all areas. But I've kind of like, I make better choices now rather than having like a whole packet of biscuits. I'll have one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and this embodied pleasure piece, it supports you to do that,
Well, you're
because the
getting the
more
pleasure out of
well,
it, aren't you? You're not like
yeah,
having to lean into the bottle of wine to make yourself feel joy. You're, yeah, that's the difference, isn't it? That's the thing that I think we miss, because we're taught to have a good time, you go and get drunk, or you to do this, you have to do that. It's kind of, well, actually, if you just tended your own garden, love, you'd be all right.
exactly. And I'm not saying that it's not difficult to adopt this either. I mean, I there's so much resistance. Like I'm running my first container now called Sensual Summer. And the first, a lot of these are women who are quite used to a lot of these practices. And one of the main topics of conversation on our first meeting was resistance, like how much they resisted actually doing the practice. And I've made my practices so that they can weave into a busy life, like half an hour a day, 5 days a week. It's like, it's not doable. But they were all like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how my mind was like, oh yeah, but you've got stuff to do and this is more important. And it runs very deep, this conditioning. So I know what resistance is all about, and I still resist it myself. I was like, my God, I've forgotten to take my own medicine. So put on a banging tune, dance while I'm doing the washing up. Dancing is my best medicine and my favorite thing to do. And you know, sober dancing was a revelation for me. I have to say, I used to always associate that to dance, I had to go out to a club and get absolutely shit faced. So ecstatic dance, five rhythms, all those sort of conscious dance things have been like an absolute lifesaver for me.
Oh, I love it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So many practices that we can weave in. So tell people, how can people find you if they're drawn in by the juiciness of your pussy?
Well, I've got my fabulous new website that is launched a few weeks ago. And what I've done is I've put together some multi-tiered programs. So there's some that are self-guided, so you can literally just buy those, and there's like videos and guidance, and you get a gorgeous what I call a pleasure guide. So you print out a pleasure guide which has the instructions and it has your journal prompts and all of that. And I've got like a 3-day one, a 1-week one, and a 1-month one. So it's quite nice for those who are a bit like, what the fuck's she talking about? To have a little microdose and have a little taste. I mean, this is, these practices, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that, I want everyone to know that this pleasure is a practice, not a given. And that, when you start some of my work, it's just about having a taste and thinking, wow, yeah, I do feel different. But then it's like, okay, now we'll go to the next level and try something new. And it's like, it's a journey, not a destination, and it's not a silver bullet. So, yeah, I've got this new website. You can find me on Instagram. I guess are you going to put all the
I'll put
details?
all the links in the bio, and
All the links. So you can find me there. And I also do one-to-one sort of bespoke VIP sort of coaching and mentoring. If you're not so keen to be in a group, I've got another group coming up called Pathways to Pleasure. So that's mid-August to mid-September. So that's like a small intimate group, probably 10 maximum. And that's a really lush program, because group support is gorgeous as well. And you can sort of interact as much or as little as you want with the group, but having accountability and sharing vulnerably with other women, it's a really powerful alchemical way to fast track change. And I hold that group. So there's that, and then I do one-to-one. So I've got lots of different offerings coming up that you can find. All the offerings are on my website.
Amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
I always say this, but it's so true. I would happily chat to you all day.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see what time it is, so you need to sort of cut me off. Yeah, I could literally sit here with you until it's dark. And
Yeah, it's just such a fascinating subject, and I want to talk more about it because I think it's something that really needs to be shared more. But we're at time, and I'm so grateful for you spending your time and energy with me today on Shameless Stories. We'll be back next week with another episode, but if you need to speak to Sally or you would like to get connected with her, all the links are in the show notes, or you can reach out to me. And thank you again for listening. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.